It's right against my back. So
So we're reading Channel Surfing Pilot by Peter J Herron today, and it's a 30-minute script, and we don't normally do this, but this is a special exception. And we want to say right at the start that the views expressed in this script are not ours. Obviously, they are the scriptwriters. So this is a comedy sketch show featuring a range of different humor styles. I'm reading the description from the writer here. From seriously dark to the subversive to the outright absurd. So there we are. Interior apartment evening. An overweight man sits on his couch staring at his phone before letting out a bored puff of his cheeks. He puts his phone down beside a can of beer, a plate of half-eaten nachos, and a TV remote on the table in front of him. After picking up the beer and cracking it open, he grabs the remote and slumps back onto the couch, drinking his beer. The screen is now filled with a blank television screen as the man's hand rises into frame and switches it on. Comatose commentary. Interior Madison Square Garden evening. Two boxers are evenly matched, both landing several blows just before the bell for the end of the final round sounds. They both return to their respective corners, claiming victory. Two grinning commentators, Ray and Bob, are sitting ringside.
Well, Bob, that was quite a contest. Both these gladiators of the ring have given their all in their bid to become heavyweight champion of the world.
that's right, Ray. After 12 grueling rounds, neither Georgie, why'd I spend all my money, Wilson, or Michael, why was I named twice Michael, have managed to put the other on the canvas. So it's down to the judges' scorecards.
That's right, Bob. Let's get the thoughts of the former three-time heavyweight champion, Joe, I should have retired a decade earlier, Bugassi.
Cuts to former heavyweight champion Joe Bugassi's mangled body lying crooked and motionless in a wheelchair. His eyes are wide open, staring blankly ahead as drool dribbles down his chin.
In your 35-year career, champ, you must have encountered opponents with the same determination shown by these two incredible fighters this evening.
Both grinning commentators now turn to Joe. He remains silent and motionless for what seems like an eternity, before slowly closing his eyes, then opening them again. Ray turns to Bob.
One blink means yes.
A hand raises up in front of the screen holding a remote control and changes the channel. Mafia Menagerie. Interior Mafia Social Club back office day. The imposing and feared Mafia Don, Carmine Spelanza, sits behind his desk in the back office of his social club, smoking a large cigar and stroking a black and white cat as The Godfather-style music plays in the background. Jimmy, a young and up-and-coming mafioso, nervously enters the room.
Jimmy, my boy.
Sorry.
Right.
Don Spelanza stubs out his cigar in an ashtray. Apologies.
Jimmy, my boy, come.
Jimmy approaches the desk. A thin veneer of confidence covers his apprehension at being in the presence of such a powerful and dangerous man.
Jimmy, you've proved yourself to be a good earner for the family.
Jimmy's posture straightens with pride at this news.
Thank you, Don Spelanza. I just want an opportunity to, earn my bones.
Don Spelanza nods quietly to himself as he ponders for a moment. This time, instead of a black and white cat, he is now stroking a small dog.
In time, my boy, in time. But first, you gotta prove your real value to the family.
Jimmy smiles eagerly.
Hey, whatever you need, Don Spelanza. You need me to consult on a Scorsese movie whilst also inexplicably managing to get a bit part in it as well, despite being wanted by the feds in 3 states?
No, Jimmy. You should know by now that first you run numbers and hijack cigarette trucks. Then you whack a few guys. Then you do a Scorsese movie.
Jimmy nods nervously.
Yes. Sorry, boss. I got it.
Don Spelanza sits nodding, waving one hand to calm Jimmy, and is now stroking the head of a large hissing python wrapped around his shoulders.
I'm sure you've heard that lousy rat Angel Folletti and his crew are trying to muscle in on my turf.
Jimmy tries to match Don Spelanza's incredulity, but is clearly distracted by an awful smell.
That low-life bomb.
Jimmy covers his nose and gags a little.
Word on the street is he had Mickey Barbato whacked.
Don Spelanza shakes his head in disapproval at this news, holding his nose with one hand as he now strokes a skunk with the other. Don Speranza?
Emma? Or is she frozen?
I think she's frozen.
Oh dear. I want you and the boys to head down to Vegas and clip that Stronzo's wings. Jimmy waves the smell away from his nose and composes himself again.
You can count on me, Don Speranza.
Apart from one hand stroking it, Don Speranza is now completely obscured by a zebra. Okay, boys, you can come in now. The stroking hand now gestures the crew in. The office door opens to reveal a sharply dressed, smooth but sinister-looking mobster, tonguing a toothpick in his mouth. This is Sammy Tightlips Corolla. The toothpick drops from his mouth, and suddenly, as if he has Tourette's, he blurts out,
How you doing?
Sammy regains his composure, picks up his toothpick, puts it back in his mouth, and coolly walks to one side. Vito, the executioner de Mayo. A blood-splattered, bare-chested man walks in wearing a black medieval executioner's hood with large axe resting on his shoulder. He casually two-finger salutes Jimmy and walks off. Tony, tough guy, Ciccone. A thin, very flamboyantly dressed, effeminate man glides gracefully into the doorway, holding a bright pink boa around his neck. As he provocatively presses up against the doorframe, he extends a delicate hand towards Jimmy. Enchanté. Tony throws one end of the pink boa over his shoulder and lightly tiptoes into the room. Donnie definitely not a rat, Salerno. A sweat, extremely agitated-looking man cautiously peers around the doorway before nervously entering the office. The shape of a tape recorder can clearly be seen under his tracksuit top. Suddenly, a feedback noise emanates from his chest. Donnie freezes in terror, his eyes darting from side to side as a ridiculous amount of beads of sweat run down his face. Donnie! Donnie starts to cross himself, whispering the Lord's Prayer as he slowly closes his eyes, waiting for the inevitable gunshot. Didn't I tell you to see a doctor about that? Donnie lets out a massive burst of nervous laughter and starts backing out of the office as he furiously starts taping the recorder on his chest, whispering, "Are you trying to get me whacked?" before walking into the chest of a large, imposing figure. And finally, Joey Hasidic Broglionistein. Donnie scurries off to the side to reveal a hulking man traditionally dressed as a Hasidic Jew. He stands calmly and menacingly surveying the room for a moment before suddenly he clicks, winks, grins, and points at Jimmy. Shalom, motherfucker. Donnie Speranza has a look of steely resolve on his face while he strokes a hyena now sitting in his side. Okay, Jimmy
boy. Oh, yeah. Sorry,
Oh, carry on.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. Okay, Jimmy boys, you know what to do. This'll be the last time that scumbag Folletti treats me like a clown.
The assembled men all nod in complete agreement. The hyena starts laughing uncontrollably. Don Speranza takes an instant offense to this and turns to address the hyena with his hand outstretched in incredulity.
Funny how? You think I'm here to fucking amuse you?
A hand raises up the front of the screen, holds a remote control, and changes the channel. Dead Fun toy advert. The screen starts strobing with bright colors as a purple blob flies into the center of the screen and splats, followed by a voiceover that is loud as it is obnoxious.
Morpheus Blob! You don't know what the fuck it is! We don't know what the fuck it is!
The barely conscious little boy sits on his bedroom floor covered in a severe rash and sores, holding the blob as the loud, obnoxious voiceover continues.
Is it toxic? Probably.
The little boy's eyes roll back to his head as he slowly keels over and is now lying on the floor, shaking and struggling to breathe.
Will your kid choke on it? Definitely.
The mother enters the room completely unconcerned as the little boy begins to violently convulse.
Oh, Billy, you sure are dead happy we brought you that amorphous blob? Or at least you will be one of those words real soon.
Cuts to a sweatshop in Bangladesh, has an assembly line of sickly children dressed in tattered and torn Nike, Gap, Disney, Zara, and Adidas t-shirts, are scooping handfuls of purple ooze out of a drum marked toxic waste into brightly colored packaging.
Was it made in a sweatshop in Bangladesh? You betcha.
As one of the children falls to the ground and some others rush to her aid, a large man dressed as a thuggy overseer from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom stands over them with his arms folded and a whip to one hand, growling his displeasure. Cuts to a disheveled and exhausted-looking mother stands beside a kid having massive tantrum, pointing at an entire supermarket aisle filled with huge amorphous blob adverts, shelves filled with the amorphous blob toy, and a guy dressed as the amorphous blob dancing maniacally beside her.
Manically. Are we going to market the shit out of this crap until you've driven close to madness so you end up just buying it to shut up the little bastard up? Hell yeah!
The screen starts strobing again with bright colours, and the blob is now in its gaudy packaging with multiple amorphous blobs dancing maniacally behind it.
Although it cost us less than 1/10 of 5 pence to make this shit, we're gonna charge you $79.99.
Price tag of $79.99 starts pulsating on the screen.
And how can we get away with charging you a shit ton of money for this bullshit without being shut down by the Consumer Product Safety Commission with no grammar?
The word kickback starts pulsating on the screen.
Because fuck you! These fleets of private jets don't pay for themselves.
A hand raises up the front of the screen holding a remote control and changes the channel. Signature dish. Interior, the Olivia Sarsaparilla cooking show set day. Texan cooking show presenter Olivia Sarsaparilla, a homely, plump and exuberant middle-aged woman with a ridiculously oversized hairstyle, stands at a kitchen counter filled with the various ingredients needed to make a chili con carne. She is joyfully crumbling a stock cube into the measuring jug filled with hot water.
Now y'all crumble one beef stock cube into 300 milliliters of hot water and pour it into the pan with the brown mince.
She pauses before finishing, crumbling the last of the stock cubes into the measuring jug, her smile suddenly gone.
Make sure y'all crumble it good, you know, like the crumbling morals of this here nation I love due to them guys, gays and liberals and adulterous heathens.
She pauses before giving herself a little shake. Smiling again, she pours the stock into the pot and then grabs an already opened tin of chopped tomatoes.
Add 1 tin of chopped tomatoes.
After she gleefully dips in the tomatoes, she picks up a small jar of herbs.
Now pop in half a teaspoon of marjoram, fresh if you can get it.
She gives the camera a cheeky wink as she puts the marjoram. Putting the jar back on the counter, she raises her hand to the side of her mouth.
But I don't mind using dried.
Her happy facade drops again and she grips the counter and takes a long and deeply frustrated breath.
But seeing how I can't go to Trader Joe's no more because they wanted me to wear those devil's underpants across my beautiful Texan mouth.
She creepily caresses her mouth with her fingers.
Y'all dang lucky I got me some dried marjoram left in my pantry, or someone would be using their God-given Second Amendment rights to get me some gosh dang herbs.
She briefly hyperventilates before regaining her composure and begins to happily hum away to herself as stirs in the marjoram before picking up a tube of tomato puree.
Squirt in about 2 tablespoons tomato puree.
And she is squirting in the puree. The tube makes a little farting noise. She erupts into a hearty yet disturbing laugh, then shakes a disapproving finger at the tube of puree.
Oh, cheeky. Don't y'all go sounding like my husband Jerry when he's been out all night drinking that beer filled those bubbles of Bonfort.
Her eyes fill with fire as she violently grips the tube of puree, spraying the remaining contents across one side of her face. Completely unfazed that she now has half a face that looks like it's been sprayed with blood, she takes a deep breath and smiles as she reaches for something that is not on the countertop.
And finally, my own special ingredient, you know, to give it that extra kick. One our Lord, our Savior, Jesus Christ would approve of.
Eva, she becomes momentarily emotional and angry in equal measure.
Even after those Italians and Jews strung him up because he said it was okay not to sell pecan pies to them dang gays.
She wipes a tear from her eyes, spreading more of the puree across her face. A smile returns, but this time it's far from welcoming as she produces a large bottle and pulls it lovingly up to the puree spattered side of her face and begins to caress it, now holding the bottle like someone in an advert.
Bromethylene rhodocoside. Oh, good old rat poison to you and me.
She puts the bottle back down on the counter, turning it to reveal a large skull and crossbones symbol.
Now, I'm going to tell y'all 1 teaspoon, 1 tablespoon, or 1 cup. Y'all just add what y'all think's right amount and just make it delicious chili con carne do good Lord's work.
She initially starts squirting in a little amount before pondering for a moment. Then she adds a little more and pauses for another moment. Her face turns to a blinding rage as she begins to empty the entire contents of the bottle into the pot, like she's strangling the life out of someone, all the while staring intensely at it. After launching the now empty bottle at the camera lens, making it shake for a moment, she begins to vigorously and violently stir in the rat poison, spraying the chili everywhere. She freezes, her stare is psychotically focused on the remaining contents of the pot, before once again shaking herself out of it and returning to address the camera with a now puree and chili-covered twitchy smile that is barely holding back her inner rage.
Now y'all just pop the lid on this, turn down the heat until it's gently bubbling away, and leave it to simmer for about 20 minutes.
She picks the lid up from the counter and calmly places it on the pot, pausing for a moment before slamming it up and down again and again, each one more violent than the last. Once she's done, she pauses again to calm herself before letting out a long and satisfied sigh.
And that's how you make my chili. He'll never cheat on me again with Cynthia from number 32 con carne.
She tips her head slightly as her eyes glare wildly into the camera and her twitching smile turns deeply sinister.
Bon appetit, Jerry.
Her hand raises up in front of the screen, holding a remote control, and changes the channel. Down on their luck, doctors, interior Royal Marsden Hospital. The presenter of a live hospital show is finishing his conversation with a less than happy-looking nurse as he turns to the camera, to address the camera.
Thanks to staff nurse Hitchin for taking time away from her busy and badly paid schedule to discuss something I can nod vacuously at and pretend I either have the knowledge of or care about.
The nurse angrily storms off, giving the presenter the finger behind his back. The presenter walks towards the door with a sign that says, "Do not disturb, surgery in progress." He scoffs to himself with an air of self-importance.
Well, that clearly only applies to people who haven't played skinhead number 2 on the bill, been a corpse on Midsummer Murders twice, and presented both demeaning homeless people for laughs and Britain's most hilarious corpses.
After reassuring himself, he pauses at the door.
So now we're going to have a little chat with the Royal Marsden's top surgeon, Dr. Pilkington. He's in the middle of an operation as we speak, but we'll do our best not to get in the way.
As the presenter enters the operating theatre, all the staff let out a simultaneous annoyed groan. The presenter approaches the less than impressed Dr. Pilkington.
So, Dr. Pilkington, can you just talk us through what procedure you are doing this morning?
Dr. Pilkington is resigned to answering the question.
Despite the massive cuts to the NHS, I've just managed to complete a triple heart bypass, and I'm just about to close up the patient's chest.
Dr. Pilkington hands a blood-stained plastic takeaway knife to the nurse.
And do you feel the cuts to the NHS have impacted your effectiveness as a surgeon?
The nurse hands Dr. Pilkington a roll of sellotape. Dr. Pilkington pulls the strip of tape, but just as he is about to answer the presenter, the patient starts to groan.
One moment. Frank?
The anesthesiologist appears just as the patient is coming to.
Frank, are you sure you gave the patient enough anaesthetic?
Frank shrugs his shoulders, then produces a hammer and whacks the patient on the head. Dr. Pilkington turns back to the presenter.
Sorry, you were saying...
Dr. Pilkington tears off a piece of sellotape in his teeth. A hand raises up in front of the screen, holding a remote controller, and changes the channel. The Killing Game. Interior, quiz show set day. The theme tune has just finished, and the colourfully dressed, grinning, and overly enthusiastic middle-aged quizmaster, Charlie Guffspiel, energetically bounds onto the set. The 3 contestants stand behind their podiums in silhouette.
Welcome everyone. I'm your host, Charlie Goffsville. let's get on with the show and with the show you all could have watched from the comfort of your own home, but instead queued in the torrential rain for 1 to 6 hours for.
He starts walking towards 3 contestants.
Let's meet our 3 contestants who are either so desperate to claw their way out of abject poverty by possibly winning a big cash prize, or they're so very pathetically starved of attention, they've resorted to coming on this show to...
He stops and prompts the audience, who all shout in unison,
Humiliate yourself for money!
The set illuminates behind Charlie to show a series of differently coloured balls of all shapes and sizes. Each one has a monetary value on it and rests on a pillar of various lengths in 3 different pits. The first pit is filled with angry monkeys holding shit in their hands and ready to hurl at contestants. The second pit has members of various street gangs all looking sadistically eager to use the bats and chains they're currently holding. The last pit is literally just on fire. Charlie does a skip and a jump as he arrives at the 3 podiums as they are also illuminated. His eyes and his whiter-than-white smile light up as he sees contestant number 1 is a young, attractive woman.
Well, 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 you lovely creature. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Phone number, cup size, favourite position.
An absolutely disgusted Debbie cuts him off.
Hi, I'm Debbie.
A camera profiles Debbie. Charlie appears uncomfortably close to her and begins to take a handful of her hair and creepily sniff it.
I'm Debbie, an elementary school teacher from Colorado Springs, Colorado.
The camera frantically moves on to a contestant number 2 as Debbie begins to angrily glare at Charlie. The second contestant is a short, plump, bespectacled man in a suit about size too small with a handkerchief in his top pocket. He tries to maintain his smile as the camera lingers on him for an uncomfortable length of time. And eventually, Charlie staggers into the frame, holding his mouth as blood trickles through his fingers. The contestant continues to stand awkwardly, smiling as Charlie spits blood and a couple of teeth onto the floor. He snatches the handkerchief from the contestant's pocket and wipes the remaining blood from his mouth, all the while angrily looking over his shoulder at the off-screen Debbie. The contestant clears his throat to get his attention. A clearly annoyed Charlie stuffs the bloody handkerchief back into the contestant's top pocket.
Right, fine. Who the hell are you and why should I care?
A distracted Charlie is still flitting evil glances at Debbie.
Hello, I'm George. I'm a plumber from Glendale, Arizona. In my spare time, I like to build model boats.
Charlie is clearly still not giving George his full attention.
Riveting, I'm sure.
George pauses for a moment, looking slightly confused.
No, wood glue, actually.
This finally catches Charlie's attention.
Wood glue? What the fuck are you talking about?
Well, you see...
Yes, I'm sure sniffing it gives you a great high.
Camera moves on to contestant 3, a tall and odd-looking, plainly dressed man. His smile is wide and enthusiastic, but he has an uneasy and unblinking stare as his eyes turn robotically to look at Charlie. As Charlie approaches, he is startled by contestant 3.
So, what's hell's your deal?
Well, Charlie, I'm Barry. I'm an as-yet unidentified serial killer from Stockton in California.
Barry puts both thumbs up.
26 and rising.
Charlie gestures towards Debbie at podium 1 while doing a cutting motion with his finger across his throat, before suddenly remembering the camera is still on him.
Well, on with the game.
He glances at Debbie with a sinister smile.
Let's see who makes it to the end. Final.
A hand raises up in front of the screen, holding a remote control, and changes the channel. Sale of the Centurion. Interior, the need to get out more shopping channel set day. Product and contact information scroll across the bottom of the screen as Clarissa and Barbie, smothered in poorly applied fake tan and dressed in gaudy, ill-fitting outfits with huge shoulder pads, sit on a brighter-than-bright pink couch, surrounded by podiums displaying a variety of the tackiest and cheapest-looking products. Both are smiling inanely as their vacuous eyes stare straight into camera. They both seem like mannequins for a moment before an annoyed voice from behind the scenes reminds them they're back from the commercial break.
Welcome back to Hour 7 of the Discerning Ladies Hour here on the Need to Get Out More shopping channel. I'm your host, Clarissa Urquhart Newly Twiny Bobbington Smith.
Also your host, Harvey Income Tomley Carter Harris Jones. Just before the break, we were desperately trying to convince you to buy this must-have item for this special man in your life.
Clarissa holds up a slightly melting brown jockstrap as a graphic appears in the top left-hand corner saying, "Chock jock for your cock," with a price of $59.99.
You too can add a bit of high fructose corn syrup, hexene, polyglycerol, polyglycerinate, benzidine, partially hydrogenated alls, territory, butylylherdicascandazone, chyrosone, potassium sorbate, pyrogemin, and sourdough flavor to your love life with this edible chocolate jockstrap.
Clarissa is momentarily distracted by a loud noise off camera before remembering her lines.
And remember, ladies, this will definitely contain nuts.
As two perform their fabricated laugh, a pale, unkempt, drunk, and dishevelled elderly man staggers onto the set. As Clarissa puts the jockstrap away, she licks the excess chocolate off her fingers and momentarily gags as the elderly man approaches the back of the couch.
Remember, ladies, just call the super duper premium plus mega premium number on the screen.
Why does your mother not call me anymore?
Despite being obviously startled by the sudden outburst from the drunken pensioner, Clarissa and Barbie maintain their composure and continue to smile inanely at the camera.
Our next item is a Christmas classic, the latest item in our June Christmas sale.
The old man lurches forward and grabs the back of the couch, swaying from side to side. He looks increasingly angry as Barbie starts gesturing towards him, smiling nervously.
I don't like turkey. Too dry.
Barbie and Clarissa flinch forward as they are sprayed with spittle.
Circa 1919, this elderly relative comes with a passionate hatred of anything post 1951.
The elderly man becomes transfixed on Barbie.
So which one are you? The one who likes it up the dirt track, I'll wager.
A penchant for unbridled racism and a quite overpowering musky aroma. He comes in celestial coconut white with a distinctly leathery finish.
The elderly man continues glaring intensely at an increasingly more nervous Barbie.
So, you think you're better than me, do ya?
A terrified and speechless Barbie looks to Clarissa for support as the elderly man starts clenching his fists and rolling his arms in an old-timey boxing manner, but she continues to address the camera as a graphic appears in the top left-hand corner saying, "Elderly relative, not suitable for children, gays, or anyone of colour that isn't white. Expiry date soon, you hope." And another Chiron scrolls across the bottom saying, "Yours now for the low, low price of a bottle of cheap whiskey and 6 cans of stout."
For the bargain price of a bottle of cheap whiskey and 6 cans of stout, you too can listen to such Christmas classics like I Remember When This Was All Fields, the never tiresome Back in My Day, and the unforgettable I Ain't Dead Yet.
Suddenly, the elderly man lunges violently towards a now screaming Barbie as it abruptly cuts to commercials. A hand raises up in front of the screen, holding a remote control, and changes the channel. Not so super. Exterior New York City street day. A gigantic and terrifying look, many-eyed, many-tentacled green monster tears through the streets of New York City, hurling cars like toys as New Yorkers flee, screaming for their lives. A sonic boom can be heard in the distance as a terrified man and woman look to the sky.
Look, we're saved. It's the probably doing more harm than good league.
The couple share a relieved embrace as a masked and caped man crashes to the ground doing the traditional superhero landing.
Look, it's Self-Righteous Man.
Self-Righteous Man arises, places his hands on his hips, and surveys the scene looking entirely smug and sure of himself. There's a sudden crack of thunder and a bolt of lightning from which a woman wearing barely any clothes emerges from.
And inexplicably scantily clad girl.
Inexplicably scantily clad girl looks entirely embarrassed to be there and makes a vain attempt to cover herself up with her hands as the man ogles her. I can do this, you know. She fires a huge bolt of lightning from her fingers, destroying a nearby car.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yes, you can.
His partner gets outraged by this before slapping him across the head. She goes to hit him again, but her attention is drawn to something else.
Look, it's
A few seconds pass before an overweight man dressed in a pair of khaki shorts, well-worn flip-flops, and a t-shirt that says Ultimate Fan emerges from the smoke created by inexplicably scantily clad girl, destroying the car, eating a large bag of chips and drinking from a big gulp.
oh, it's
Yes, it's Toxic Fanboy.
A thoroughly unimpressed toxic fanboy surveys the scene, taking a drink from his big gulp before stuffing a handful of chips into his mouth.
This is shit.
Self-righteous man intervenes.
All right, future casualties, we'll take it from here.
As the couple disappear down an alleyway, self-righteous man beckons the other team members forward.
Okay, guys.
Inexplicably scantily clad girl gives him a dirty look.
Hey, Toots. It wasn't me who drew you that way, okay?
Inexplicably scantily clad girl, still annoyed but reluctantly, concedes.
I could, of course, take on this hideous interdimensional beast myself, but with all these tentacles flying about, this is clearly a job for
Self-righteous man stops and looks around.
Hey, where the fuck?
He stops himself and repeats quietly under his breath, PG-13, PG-13, PG-13.
Where the gosh darn heck is Sawman?
He looks around but only sees the other two team members.
Okay, 1 sec.
He reaches under his cape and pulls out a cell phone, and as he does, inexplicably scantily clad girl throws her arms up in frustration. Self-righteous man makes a call and waits as it rings. Cut to a man with chainsaws for arms sits on the toilet with a ringing phone on the bathroom cabinet top beside him. He lifts his arms up, unsure what to do, and fumbles to try and get to the phone, cutting a large slice into the cabinet.
Karen? Karen!
We hear his wife Karen call out.
I'm finishing making lunch for the kids, Kevin. I'll come wipe your ass in a second.
A hand raises up in front of the screen, holding a remote control, and changes the channel. Apocalypse Now. Interior new studio evening. A young, attractive, and well-dressed anchorwoman, Jill St. Joel, sits behind the news desk, surrounded by massive screens with breaking news filling them. The news chyron also scrolls across the bottom saying, Conservative MP claims he innocently mistook homeless man for clay pigeon. Overly dramatic music plays as she swivels her chair round to address the screens behind her, as a clearly terrified and panicked elderly academic Professor Shankly appears on it as she turns.
So, Professor Shankly, what implications does this discovery have for mankind?
The asteroid is approximately 12 miles across. It's...
Jill St. Joel nods as she raises a pondering finger to her mouth, but is clearly not paying attention.
Well, folks, you heard it exclusively here on this cold and windy day in London. Asteroids are big.
Professor Shankly is momentarily aghast before continuing.
Yes, they are. But this one is twice the size of the Chicxulub asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs some 66 million years ago.
Jill St. Joel nods and smiles to herself as she again turns to face the camera.
Dinosaurs, eh? I believe they got their big break in Hollywood by landing their starring roles in Steven Spielberg's 1993 classic, Jurassic Park.
She returns to looking at the now confused and even more panicked Professor Shankly.
Okay, look, my calculations show that it should directly impact the Earth in about...
She abruptly interrupts him again, but this time cuts his mic as she raises one hand to her earpiece and swings back round on her chair to face the camera.
Professor, I'm going to have to stop you there for a moment. as we have some even more breaking news from the world of entertainment.
Professor is still on the monitor behind her in floods of tears, tearing at his clothes.
We can exclusively reveal that Hollywood power couple Beyonce and Jay-Z have named their fourth child Bumblebee Diamond Popcorn. Let's hear more about this exclusive from Jane, our entertainment correspondent, who is somehow...
Jill fakes a cough, the word "or."
Live from our glamorous studio in sunny LA, where I should have been.
A distraught Professor raises a pistol to his temple just as the monitor changes to the entertainment correspondent, Jane, who looks very pissed off, wearing the exact same outfit as Jill. A furious Jill springs from her seat, pointing at the screen.
You fucking bit!
A hand raises up in front of the screen, holds a remote control, and changes the channel. Comatose Kid, interior hospital room, day. Overly dramatic music plays as several members of a Latin American telenovela family gather around the hospital bed of a teenager in a coma. Birthday paraphernalia fills the room, all celebrating Diego's 16th birthday. His distraught mother approaches the bed, holding Diego's favorite teddy bear, as his much older daughter, Isabella, joins her as she places a comforting hand on her shoulder. All the dialogue is in Spanish with subtitles, and the acting is terrible.
10 long years we've all been coming here on Diego's birthday as a family.
She clutches the bear dramatically to her chest.
10 years to the day you
She struggles to get the words out as she wipes a tear from her eye.
accidentally shot yourself 11 times with Grandma Consuelos's pink 9mm Glock G18 handgun.
She turns around just as Grandma Consuelo's head appears from the crowd of gathered family members.
It's a G19 Glock.
Grandma Consuelo strokes the pink gun lovingly, pressing it to her cheek as the mother pauses for a moment of reflection.
Grandma Consuelos really loves that gun.
As she turns back to look at Diego, one of his fingers suddenly starts to twitch. Grandma Consuelos notices it and points at Diego with her gun.
Look!
The family let out a singular gasp. Without looking at her, the mother casually pushes Grandma Consuelo's gun away from pointing at Diego as he begins to wake up.
Oh my God, it's a miracle.
She turns to the family, overjoyed as the music swells.
10 long years and he wakes up on his 16th birthday. I prayed to baby Jesus the day would come when I could hear his sweet voice again.
She turns back to Diego, who's now sitting up in bed looking angry.
Diego?
The camera quickly swivels to a close-up of Diego.
Mama, it wasn't an accident.
The dramatic music rises as the camera zooms in so close to Diego's face that it knocks him out. The camera again quickly swivels to a close-up of the mother.
I've waited these long and inexplicably twist-filled years that couldn't possibly happen to a single family to tell you I'm not actually your mother. Your mother is...
Before she can finish her confession, the camera zooms in yet again, smashing into her face as well, knocking her to the ground. The camera now swivels to confused-looking Grandma Consuelos and once again zooms in so hard it smashes onto her face.
No, you idiot! It's Isabella!
The camera searches among the crowd for Isabella. After finally finding her, it tries to zoom in, but she runs for her life, screaming. A hand raises up in front of the screen, holding a remote control, and turns off the television. And that ends the script.
I'm sorry I disappeared. The computer just went black and turned itself off. And then I was trying to send you a message. Oh, I don't know what's going on.
You just looked very, very concentrated on the corner of your screen.
Where was I still for ages?
You froze, and we thought you were all being incredibly still.
How long did it take before you realised I wasn't dead?
Yeah.
So, thoughts on this? Where are we with this? Who'd like to?
I've got notes, if that's helpful.
Okay, go for it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it is interesting. I think, you know, if indeed the writer did come from or does come from a cartooning background, that sort of makes a lot of sense to me. I think, you know, I'm not sure about how this series is going to pan out in the writer's mind, whether it's going to be each episode a different lot of things? Will you run out of different genres to, peer at, or will you be revisiting it? I was just thinking really about a rather boring thing, which is money, the cost of making these things, because obviously with cartooning, the only limit, I suppose, is one's ability, but some of these things are seeming like, to me, already not cheap. So I was just thinking, how would you afford to do that? Yeah, I just think there's lots of things which probably some people will feel a bit sensitive about, and I just wonder whether some of those things, to me, it feels like it could go one of two ways. It could either be more kind of careful, about sort of who you are. It's like, oh look, everybody there's kind of people in wheelchairs, there's Jewish people, there's fat people, there's this people and that person, or actually in a funny way to make it nastier, and whether in a weird way that would be funnier. And I'm not quite sure yet which way is going to be best for it, but just in terms of small details, it's quite fun that the Godfather's pet species changes all the time. I think that there's some fun to be had in that. And there's some good sort of meta stuff, about sort of suddenly talking about Martin Scorsese, and it's like a film and it's like this, and I quite enjoy those aspects of it. And kind of I didn't draw you like that, and things is quite fun. I think we usually enjoy that as an audience. It reminded me quite a bit of Airplane, that sort of quite slapstick humor that film had. And also, I don't know if anybody knows it, but Amazon Women on the Moon, which was quite similar. It was an 80s thing, and a film. And this chap goes bimbling about in his sort of vest and underpants through various different things, like a 50s B movie and various other programs, and it is quite fun, but it reminded me a little bit of that. Yeah, it made me think of lots of things, actually, this, because I was thinking, I think these need to feel sort of necessary and funny, and if you are wanting to satirize certain genres, why are you doing it, and what do you want to say? Because I think we probably need to be quite clear on that when we're writing things, because it will help sharpen the humor. I mean, I was thinking about the conversations that loads of people have had over recent years about rape gags and if they can ever be funny. And I mean, theoretically they should be able to be funny, because we laugh at death, and that's obviously a more permanent crime if we kill somebody, but we don't laugh at rape. And I was just thinking, is it just because we've never found a funny rape joke? But I'm just sort of thinking about sort of things that people might think were bad taste, and how you use those. And I think if it feels necessary, and if it feels sharp, and if it is genuinely funny, then I think we can get away with an awful lot. Yeah, I like the laughing hyena. I wondered if Don could actually be a clown at the end when he said that he's being treated.
I was expecting to see clown
yeah,
makeup on.
Yeah, I was too. I think that
would have been even funny. You think I'm fucking funny to you with a clown makeup on?
Yeah, and there he is. Yeah, and, yeah, and I was thinking, yeah, it's interesting. Then we have a child with who's dying from his toy, and there's the sweatshops and things like that. I just think sometimes more information is given than we need. Like are we doing this? Are we doing that? And it's like, well, of course they are. We know that, and maybe just showing rather than telling us as well. Yeah, I mean, I quite liked it when sort of an obnoxious child got it. I think somehow we can get away with a lot if we feel that characters deserve it, and we enjoy, sort of, if it's a perfectly nice child, then I think we don't. But if it's a really bratty kid, like Veruca Salt, for example, we think, oh, good, hooray, she's gone down the chute, So, yeah, there's a weird kind of moral thing, I think, isn't there? Yeah, you almost want sometimes song and dance routines, but of course that's going to be even more expensive. Tiny things like just I would go through it with a fine-tooth comb and just think, is this funny enough? Is this sharp enough? What do I want to say here? Why am I saying this? Why this genre? And maybe just help your readers out by saying it's an American thing, it's a Scandi noir, it's a whatever, just to give us an idea of the world we're playing in. And give us, please, some punctuation so we can breathe, or we'll all die.
I was running out of breath quite a lot.
I know. I noticed. Yeah, and so do think about people. It's like music, it punctuates it and helps people read and make sense of it. Yeah, I mean, I think the American lady probably wouldn't talk in milliliters. I think that she probably, I was thinking, maybe she could have other things that she brings in, sort of holy relics, and and she could just start to bring in more things as she gets madder and madder, that cooking lady who is
Unless
good
that
fun.
milliliters was a on purpose joke, because she mentioned cups as
Maybe.
well, doesn't she? So
Yes,
maybe
she
just bring
does.
through all the
Yeah,
possible.
that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
might have been
or
a
they
joke.
could have increasingly stupid sort of chalices and different sort of things that they measure out in. And yeah, I thought that yeah, and it's quite fun, the Cynthia from number 32, although of course they always seem to have really, really long numbers, don't they? Like 1392 and things like that. I don't know why they do. But yeah, I think surgeon's a mister as well, just tiny little things in case it's helpful rather than doctor. And yeah, and also sometimes with these things where I think about the Royal Marsden one, sometimes in a lot of programs, in presenters will come and they go, well, can I have a go at that? And they patently obviously are rubbish, and they're doing some building a dry stone wall or something, and they start to put some in and it's a mess, and the person's having their time wasted, and they also know that they're gonna have to redo it when the camera's off. But just thinking about them doing it with an operation, and obviously the stakes are higher, and whether we could just, I think it's just about ramping things up and making them more ridiculous in a lot of cases. Right, I'm just having a look. Sorry, I've got quite a few bits and bobs, but yeah, I think maybe don't have Charlie guff thing say that they're wasting their time from the word go. I think we need to build, otherwise you've got nowhere to go if you sort of just say you're wasting your time, losers. I think it's just good to sort of have him sort of, here we are, it's a game show, here's the prizes, it's great, and then to start getting the boot in, as he does with Debbie. I would love to see some real angry monkeys though in the program. I think that would be very entertaining. Where are we? Yeah, flatter them up ridiculously about the value of the live experience and then pull the rug out from under them. Yeah, the selling of the old man is fun, but I think the humour needs to be more pointed. Probably there aren't many people from 1919 left anymore, so I'm just thinking about what can we say about that generation that hasn't already been said. I mean, we always people say about the casual racism, and I think probably it's getting on to sort of the boomer thing, and so I just think I'm also thinking about the kind of shelf life of a lot of gags. I know we've had this for a bit, but just what is going to perhaps last into the future a little bit. So yeah, superheroes, good fun. I like the meta commentary. Yeah, interesting that the female characters are virtually gagged. We don't need to be told that Karen's going to wipe Sawman's ass, because I think it's pretty clear that he's sitting on the lav with these saws for hands and just Karen, and I mean, she could say up in a minute, but if she could just be like looking up with a kind of oh not again sort of look, and yeah, it's about cutting back and less is more and all that sort of thing. Sorry, I'm nearly done. I liked it that you said that in the cookery one, Catherine, you said bubbles of bum fart, and that was quite funny. I don't know what the name was. It's a funny name, Baphomet or something. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's funny, and also it just really made me laugh in a very childish manner, and also if you're going to have the sort of outer story, the frame story of the chap who's, got the zapper in his hand and he's changing channel, it'd be nice if sometimes things happened in that. Otherwise, it's just a bit boring. It's just like kind of, oh, the person's changing the channel again. So maybe some story could develop in each episode with him, ending with him, I don't know, expiring or something, if you like, just to sort of like end on a high or a low. But yeah, I'm just thinking, what we could do with that frame rather than it just being sort of a little bit predictable.
Can he fall asleep and then somebody knocks from inside the television, knocks on the inside?
Yeah, that would be
wake up,
quite
wake up.
Yeah, because they can't
Something
carry
like that.
on. They can't carry on without him. Yes, he's
Yeah,
got to be
exactly.
there for it to, yeah. So those are all my things, whether they're useful or not. But yeah, just a lot of blah, 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 blah.
Cool. No, that's brilliant. Thanks, Emma. Fantastic. Stuart.
Okay, they were very thorough notes, Emma. Thank you. Well done for doing all those, as ever. Gosh, I don't know where to start really. I thought, I mean, some elements I really liked, and sort of the sort of comic book humor I'm a big fan of. So that kind of style and of that genre, I really like. And I think, I mean, the superhero thing in New York, I thought was very, sharp and funny. But it's kind of, I kind of just want, as Emma said, you need to push it a bit more in certain areas, particularly that scene. I think you could go to a lot more to town on that. As Emma said, the sort of going in order, the first scene, I like the stroking of the animals, the different animals, and the smells and things like that. As a nice gag. The reference to Goodfellas at the end, you talking to me, sort of thing. So that was, nice little touches there, the sort of mafiosa type things going on. What was it? The toy advert one with the blob of horrible things that was made in a sweatshop in somewhere. It's very dark humor, quite sick, as was some other scenes. And I'm just thinking, yeah, did that work for me? I'm not sure it did. I get that. I like the sort of poking the fun at kids' toy adverts and these horrible plastic things. But I think it just went a little bit too over the edge with the sort of references to the kids working in some other country, and also how you're going to film that. You're going to go out there and film that, and how are you going to do that, and kind of whether you should show that. You could reference it, I guess, in some way. The signature dish scene with the that was the cookery one, wasn't it? The killing. I can see that working really well, actually. It was a bit long. I thought the scene went on a bit long. But I did think you should find a way of portraying it without the offensiveness that was sort of coming out a bit there. And I know what you're trying to do in terms of the sort of redneck Texan attitudes to the more diverse parts of our population. But I think you could find a different way of doing that. That's my own personal view. Yeah, the game show one. Yeah, I think Emma said everything I wanted to say on that one. Killing game. Or no, actually, one thing on the game show one, I was a bit confused about him eating blood or something. There was some reference to him having a handkerchief or blood, and I just thought,
I missed that bit as
whoa,
well.
where did that come
I was
from?
reading it and I was kind of, what just happened?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
kind of like, whoa, where, I
Did
think that
she
needs
hurt
fleshing
him?
out and explaining what's going on there a bit more, because I was like, whoa, where did that, what's going on?
I
What's
think
going on here?
Debbie punched him in the mouth. I think that's why he's got
Oh,
blood.
okay.
Spitting out some teeth.
Sorry,
yeah.
maybe didn't pick that up when I was trying to concentrate on the reading.
Yeah.
So the Sailor the Centurion, I actually like that really dark humor about the elderly, and I only say that because I have a 91-year-old stepfather who's I'm going through that at the moment with him.
This is being recorded, don't forget.
Oh yes, sorry. But no, it's kind of, that's, it's part of the you try and make light-hearted quite a serious situation, really, that someone's getting really old. So yeah, very dark humor, which I like. I think I've covered everything else. I think the Apocalypse Wow sketch section with Professor Shankly, I think that sort of was deliberately lampooning those kind of end of the world films, and I think we've seen quite a lot of that before. And I just thought, what are you trying to do here, and how are you going to put a different spin on this, really? But yeah, and also the last scene, the comatose kid, I kind of thought, well, what are you trying to say here as well? It's kind of, what were you trying to satire? That was the weaker scene for me, the last one, if I'm honest. But there we go.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Catherine?
First of all, you need to proofread. Grammar, stifling for breath. The actors need to breathe, unfortunately. And there's a couple of typos I noticed as well. There's a word here or there missing, which I don't think were on purpose. Like ponders for moment. I think you literally missed out an A. Things like that on page 4, I think it was. I liked the premise of the changing of the going the transferring from skit to skit with the changing of the channel. That's a nice idea. I think that worked quite well. This was a cold read for me. I hadn't read it beforehand. I can see what you're doing. The thing is with comedy, whether it's dark or not, you're going to offend someone. There's always going to be somebody that finds offense to something. So you do need to be quite careful with that. But it depends on, you either really go for it or you can't just half hold back, because then it comes across as offensive. If you really go for something, it's just, oh, it's funny. It's obviously a joke. So there's a fine line, so be careful with that sort of thing. This came across to me like a live version of Family Guy. It was lots of parodies, which is always fun. One thing I would say, I'd say either condense the skits or keep coming in and out of them, because they're too long. The jokes go on a bit too long, and it loses the oomph. There's no snappiness into them. There is some funny jokes in there, but because it's so long per skit, it becomes a little plodding, and that with comedy can be quite tricky. The PG-13 thing should be written as dialogue, shouldn't it? If he's saying it under his breath, then write it as under his breath with dialogue. I'd say, yeah, either chop it up or condense them, because they're just a little bit dragged out. They're a little bit stretched out on some of them. I liked the whole continuity joke with the animals, but interested into how you were going to film that. That would be, never work with animals, especially wild ones from the Sahara Desert or whatever. Whether or not you'd be able to get them, and a trained one at that. So that would be a issue, safety as well as budget. The elderly man sketch, it took me a while to get the joke, because I don't think it was set up correctly. It actually read like he was just some random person walking into the set, and it didn't snap. I think really actually bring him on as a piece that they're selling. That would be more funny. But maybe just don't reveal it straight away. Maybe you hear his voice and then, oh, and by the way, this is the elderly man or whatever. But the way he came on, I was confused for quite a while. I'm not sure if that was on purpose, but I don't think it worked. But that's just my opinion. Yeah, I think there's some good stuff in there. But I think it could do with redrafting, perhaps. With comedy, with this sort of stuff, you either really go for it with like the airplane type thing or the Family Guy type thing, or don't, but don't go halfway, because then it can come across as offensive and it won't be funny, and then you probably won't get your budget or you won't get your pilot filmed. Either shorten them, or keep coming back in. Maybe he keeps flicking back. And what Emma said about the guy, I think, me personally, I think it would be quite nice to leave him doing nothing until the crescendo at the end of the series, and then something massive happens, But other than that, I can see what you were trying to do, and I think there's some good ideas there. It just needs perhaps reworking in places, but some of it was quite funny, I thought. Dark, yes, some of it, but there's nothing wrong with dark humor. There's lots of different types of humor. It's all down to how it's shot and how it's directed. But there's it needs a little bit of work, but there's definitely there's a starting point, definitely. So well done so far.
Brilliant. Thank you. My comment, sort of general comments. Format is, you've got some scenes in there where you describe them cutting to somewhere, but you don't give as a scene heading. So they do need to have a new scene heading, a different location, so that it's set up as a new scene. I thought there were a few things that it reminded me. It reminded me of Gogglebox in some ways. That sort of pastiche of
Very dark Gogglebox.
a very dark Gogglebox. Yeah. It reminded me of it felt overall the feeling was quite 1980s, I thought. It had a quite sort of old style comedy feel. I don't know whether that's because having said that, I've been watching recently the Monty Python thing on Netflix, which is the making of Monty Pythons, which is very illuminating actually, and still cracks me up like nothing on earth, because it was just bizarrest thing. I mean, the humor was just off the wall, wasn't it? You know? But that's quite interesting to see who wrote them and how they did them and how they brought them together.
Sorry, just one thing I forgot to say, that it would be quite interesting if these are the starts of the things that are going through, and it's keeping those particular scenes but taking the story along within those
moving
scenes.
it along. Yes, that's a good point.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt them.
No, you're all right. I thought the Killing Games one was it had a very sort of 1970s, 1980s feel for me, because it was that kind of lechery thing, you know, going on, which obviously still happens, but I don't think it's quite as obvious now as it was back then. It was part of the, you know, sort of fabric of being a woman anywhere, actually. But I also noticed that you have a lot of what I call Mrs. Do As You Would Be Done Bys. A lot of names which were compound names throughout each different sketch, which if you want them to stand alone as different to each other, it depends. Do you want people to see the same writer throughout? I would have thought you wanted a little bit of difference, so I wouldn't have perhaps quite had so many compound names. And found a different way to say those. I can see what you're doing with that, but find a different way to make those gags, maybe. What else was I going to say? I would not have used Royal Marston by name, actually. So Royal Marston might get quite upset about that. I would have maybe called it something else, you know, and a gag that was a similar name, but, you know, a made up name. People know where it is. That was all I've got really in a general feeling. My main thing was that it were chuckles but not belly laughs. And I presently go to quite a lot of comedy store evenings at the moment. And it's really interesting to see different comedians and how they approach different stories that they're telling, and which are the ones that work better than others. And the ones that work the best are obviously the ones that have been doing it the longest, but who are clearly very comfortable with their subject matter. And they're clearly very comfortable when they get up to do it. They may be nervous, but they look like they're at home doing it. But it's the stories, and there are people that will do some stuff that's really subversive and really offensive, but they do that thing that you just said, Catherine, is they make it really, really, really offensive, and people know they're joking. It's when you kind of tentatively, ooh, you know, maybe you might not like this, and then they say it, and then people go, oh no, you know.
Yeah.
And the other thing is people like a good long story that goes off and comes back, and you know, so I don't know whether you can. Maybe it's just a thing to go and sit at go to a lot of comedy stores, go to a lot of comedy nights, you know, stand-ups, go and see stand-ups, and I don't know, but it's interesting. It gives you a good insight into it. So that's all I've got to say, really.
I think I mean, comedy is like food, it's a personal taste thing.
Yeah,
You're gonna like what you like, but it's comedy is actually more technical than drama, and you have to be very particular when it comes to actually producing something. You've got to be really in the know of what it's going to come across as on the post-production side of it. So I would strongly suggest either condensing them or switching back and forth, because they're far too stretched out at the moment. You'll lose people's attention, especially with such hard-hitting gags. I'd say punch and go rather than keep trying to punch, because it becomes unfunny after a while. It's like a continuous joke saying the same thing over and over.
Sorry, I'm going to have to go.
Then that could work. So
that's okay. Thanks, Emma. I think
That's all right.
I think we've come to a natural end anyway. So.